Hello and welcome to Sean White's Solar and Energy Storage Podcast. Today we have Gerrit Barnard, and Gerrit Barnard is the Director of Sales at EMEA at C&D Technologies, Trojan Battery Company, and that's a mouthful, and we were just talking about that, and so I'm going to let you explain this, Gerrit. Exactly what is EMEA at C&D Technologies? Of course, most of us already know what Trojan Battery Company is. They've been around for a long time, and the old timers installed their first solar system with Trojan Battery L16s like I did. So, hey Gerrit, welcome to the show. And what's happening over there in South Africa? You're in South Africa.
Yes, thank you very much for today. And yes, so I can tell you briefly, I'm the sales director for Europe, Middle East, and Africa. That's where the EMEA stands for. And then C&D Technologies is part of Trojan Battery Company. We are one big battery company that amalgamated in 2018. It's two great American brands, one in mission critical applications and one in more low-speed electric vehicles and solar applications.
Oh, great. Okay, so I didn't even know that. Like I've known Middle East, Africa, Europe, all that kind of stuff, but I've never seen that abbreviation. EMEA is Europe, Middle East, and Africa. So we're learning already. And I wasn't even aware, too, that Trojan merged with another company. Did one company buy the other company, or they just kind of joined forces, got married, had a wedding?
Yes, well, one company bought the other one, and yes, our owners, the company that holds both the brands, they amalgamated it together.
Okay, so which company bought the other one?
C&D took over Trojan as a company, which is owned by KPX Capital.
Okay, so C&D bought Trojan. Okay, because I remember going to different Trojan booths over the years, probably about the time that this was happening, going like, what are you guys going to do if everybody switches to lithium ion? And you would oftentimes hear when you go to a lead acid battery booth that they would like, oh, lead acid's never going away. It's awesome and all that kind of stuff. And so what's the state of that right now as far as like, Trojan, lead acid, lithium ion, and C&D technologies?
Well, that's a great question. I mean, flooded lead acid batteries and BRLA or AGM, which is your sealed lead acid technology, I don't think it'll ever disappear. I mean, it's still a great 98% recyclable product. It's very sustainable. Manufacturing process is managed sustainably. So yeah, it will always be there. In the forefront of technology, lithium is at this stage the buzzword, obviously. So yes, we do have a lithium portfolio for low-speed electric vehicles, as example, which is produced in our US facility. That's more for golf carts and low-speed electric vehicles. And then as a company, we're investigating lithium-ion technology for data center applications, telecoms applications, and then in the future, maybe solar applications.
Great. I have a question out of curiosity. So, for the Trojan lead acid battery sales, is it more new systems or people replacing their batteries on their older systems? So, I've been working with some people that have older systems that are replacing their batteries, or what do you see?
Well, there's a trend where a lot of people are replacing systems that they have, but there's a lot of markets where we sell new technology. For example, the solar AES range from Trojan specifically is a new technology that we launched last year. It's exceptionally well perceived in the solar applications. It's specifically manufactured for that market. So new builds also come up with those products. And then, yes, we also replace the conventional lead acid portfolio that we all know, the L16s that you mentioned, the T105s that we used to use. We still have places where they've been running for 11 years. So it's still a great battery, but yes, people are looking at new technology and trying to sometimes get away from the aspect of maintenance. So they would look at a non-maintenance product or a maintenance-free product. And that's where the market is specifically going.
So, where is Trojan right now as far as lithium ion goes?
So lithium ion, we do produce our own units for the low speed electric vehicle market in the USA. We are well-known producer. We have a 48 volt, 105 amp hour block, which basically fits into a golf cart. I am sure that with the correct charging parameters, you can also utilize that in solar applications.
Okay, great, great. And you mentioned too that there's, great recycling, and I know that lead acid batteries are, I think they're sort of the poster child for recycling because, lead is not good for you and it's heavy, and how do you get rid of it? And it's real easy to turn back into a battery. So are you involved with the recycling aspect of it?
Yes, we pride ourselves as a sustainable company. So recycling is part of our core, it's part of our business. That's why we say some of our products is up to 99% recyclable. So yes, we can reuse the lead inside the battery. It goes through a specific recycling process. And yes, so what we put out, 98 to 99% of that can be used again.
Great, great. I wonder what's happening to that other 2%.
Well, some of it is part of water. So if you look at a flooded battery, there's obviously water inside it. So the water is mixed with acid. So sometimes some of the acid gets lost or some of the water evaporates
Oh,
during operation. So not
okay.
100% of what, yeah, that's
Okay, so
basically
you're including the
it.
water in that. That makes sense. That's great. Yeah. Yeah, so it's just like people that aren't as familiar with the Trojan batteries that are coming into the industry kind of newer than other people. There are these like maroon colored batteries, and
Hmm.
a lot of times people are getting the ones that you could do maintenance on. So you could take the caps off. And
Yes.
then what happens is, like you were saying, there's water molecules in there and the acid, acid has water in it. And you will do things to do maintenance to a lead acid battery, like an equalization charge. And you do this to the types of lead acid batteries that you can add distilled water to. And what some people call it boiling the batteries, but it's just like a controlled overcharge in a way. It's the highest voltage that a lead acid battery will see. And it does a couple of things. It stirs up the batteries. So it's creating bubbles. It's doing electrolysis, just like we make hydrogen. It's splitting water molecules in half. Off the negative comes hydrogen, off the positive comes oxygen when you're doing electrolysis. So that's happening inside the battery. And those bubbles do a couple of things. They stir up the battery. So you get something called stratification if you're not driving around in your car over potholes, stirring up the battery. You have to do it a different way. And so it stirs up the battery that way. And then you also can get lead sulfate crystals building up on the lead acid battery plates. And those lead sulfate crystals come from not being fully charged often. So with a lithium-ion battery, it's not healthy to leave it at 100% state of charge all the time. And with a lead acid battery, it's not healthy not to get to 100% state of charge very often. And like every day would be ideal to get up to 100% state of charge. And so if you leave it at 80% for a week or something like that, that would be one way to build up these lead sulfate crystals. And those little bubbles from electrolysis, hydrogen bubbles and oxygen bubbles, will get in there. And some people call it scraping the plates. And I've seen some people, so I did a few classes over in Islamabad, and they were for cell phone companies and things like that. And they were actually doing equalization on sealed batteries. Do you know anything about that? Because I was originally taught like you don't do equalization on a sealed battery, but then they were doing it. And I know Trojan has some sealed lead acid batteries where you can't add the distilled water to them.
Yes, we do. So talking about what you spoke about is partial state of charge conditions, where, for example, you can't charge your batteries full in order to discharge them again, but you can only charge them up to 70% before you start using them again. We have an answer for that in the lead acid industry. It's a carbon additive that we add to the negative plate of the battery to help support partial state of charge conditions. So with our AES range from Trojan as an example, in partial state of charge conditions, the effect on the battery is not as much as it would be on a conventional battery or AGM battery. So we've compensated for that and we've worked around that.
Oh, so that's like a carbon layer that prevents the lead sulfate crystals, I guess.
It's a carbon additive that we basically add to it. It just prevents and prolongs the state of charge. So it doesn't have the large scale effect of the PSOC condition.
Okay.
Yes, so we've tried to compensate for that because of the conditions that happens in solar applications.
Okay, so when you don't get to that full state of charge all the time, does it also help you get to a lower state of charge, like to cycle it down further? Because I know a lot of people will only cycle their lead acid batteries down to 50% to make them last longer.
Well, yes, you can basically discharge the battery to 60% and still stay in terms of our warranty conditions, so 40% left in charge.
Okay, so that would be 60% depth of discharge is the same thing as 40% state of charge. So we
State
got
of charge.
DOD and
Yes.
SOC. Yep. Just trying to clarify for people that are learning these things. Great.
And yeah, the maroon color is what we're known for, the brand. We've been along for many years. We've done multiple of systems in the African continent for many years. So our batteries are well known in the solar industry as well.
Great, great. Okay, yeah. And so it's nice to talk to somebody that has experienced summer of 2025. So you're down there in the southern hemisphere. This has solar in the name of the podcast. And I'm very familiar with South Africa. I have relatives there. My half brother, when he finished high school, he moved there as a missionary. He started a nonprofit. He married a Zulu. I have Zulu niece and nephew, or, half Zulu. And I've actually even done some work there, and he's in Durban. His organization is called World Changers Academy. And you're in Cape Town, so you're, a little ways away. And I went from Cape Town to Durban one time. It's just like you jump in an airplane. I forget if it was like an hour or two, something like that, probably.
Hour and a half. Yes, hour and a half.
Yeah, and so Cape Town was beautiful, and the climate is actually not too different from the Mediterranean climates that we have in California. And there's another guy that's there that you might know that I've done. I think we did some like videos together a long time ago, and he's promoting solar. David Lipschitz, do you know him?
I've heard of him, yes.
Yeah, okay. And I remember when I was there, it was just by coincidence, it was his birthday and we hung out and stuff like that. And then I had like a kind of not a good experience. There's a guy named Rael Zeev. Have you ever heard of that guy? He started this solar company. Okay, good for you because...
Yes,
Oh, you do know him?
I've heard about the solar company, but not of him himself. So
Oh, you haven't heard of him in particular. So he started some solar company. He's like, I'm going to hire you to come teach me solar and fly all the way here. And I show up and I was like trying to help him with, he was trying to do some Sunny Island system. And I was like, well, let's call SMA. Like, who's better to talk to about this than SMA? And he's like, what did I have you come over here if you're just going to call SMA? And it's like, well, who's better to talk to? And then so he said, in this relationship. And then he paid me some money. And then he just like sent me off to like Cape Town. I remember staying at it was a nice hotel, and I had actually ended up having a great time. And then he threatened me. So I just gave him his money back. But
funny enough, I used to work for them, for SMA Solar Technology in South Africa.
Oh, maybe we called you. It might have been you that we called. And
yeah.
Yeah, and he was trying to start some solar company. He wasn't native from South Africa. He was like from Zimbabwe, I think. And I imagine he must not be in business anymore because obviously, for obvious reasons, doing the solar business. But that was kind of a strange situation I had over there. But then I had a great time, and I went down to, I think I like went on a bus and went as far south. And so that was, what do you call that? The Cape, I guess?
Cape Point.
Cape Point, yeah. And I remember I saw penguins. They have like native penguins because you're over there facing Australia. Do you ever see penguins at your house showing up?
Not at my house, luckily they're not showing up. But yeah, when we go to the beach, we sometimes do see them, yes.
Yeah, I remember seeing these like native South African penguins. I remember they kind of smelled, just like, birds and stuff like that.
Like
sometimes.
birds, yeah.
Yeah, but it was pretty cool. And then I remember looking at the Cape Point, and you could see where the two different oceans meet. What it would be, I guess that is the Atlantic Ocean and the Indian Ocean.
That's correct, yes.
But anyway, it's like anybody that is experiencing winter right now, especially people that are further north than me, go check out Cape Town. It's the coolest place. Yeah. And it was just like beautiful. It's summer right now. It's a good place to go. And then also, I remember, and Durban too, another great place in South Africa is, I remember writing a book in my stepmother's condo that is overlooking the beach in Durban. And that was a super awesome spot there. Just they got a nice beach and all that kind of stuff. And then I went to Johannesburg, and I went to a conference that was led by Al Gore. So I got my picture with Al Gore and a bunch of other people for the Climate Reality Project. And so that was pretty cool. And that was, I think I've been there to South Africa like 3 different times. So everybody check it out. It's pretty cool. Oh yeah, and I went and saw Robben Island. And so that's where Nelson Mandela was in jail for all those years. And then there was somebody else that I know that he actually didn't survive the pandemic. And his name was Aubrey Magope. And he did some time there too. I think he was the youngest one. He started an organization called the Black Consciousness Movement. And I went and I took some pictures of his old cell and I like go like, hey Aubrey, I got some pictures of your cell. Him and his son was my brother's best friend, and they actually, it was a tragedy that, rest in peace to both of those guys, and Karabo and Aubrey Mugabe. But anyway, that was just a little bit about my experience down there in Cape Town, and it's a beautiful place. Everybody should go check it out, especially now if you're cold. A lot of cold people are up here in the northern hemisphere. So maybe you could tell me a little bit more too about, like, we've been talking about Trojan mostly, the brand that I'm familiar with and all the old timers in the solar industry know very well. I would expect that there's a good chance that the very first solar system that fed the grid in the United States probably had Trojan batteries on it. Like, I would bet, like, at least 50-50 or greater. And people would have to hook batteries up to an inverter with a charge controller, and that inverter would have like a separate output where when your batteries were all charged, you could send it to the grid. They would push the sell button. So maybe you could tell me a little bit more about C&D Technologies. What's C&D Technologies?
Yes, so C&D Technologies was founded about 114 years ago by two brothers in America. They basically won a project to electrify their school, and that's where they started the whole business.
Oh, yeah. Do you know what city it was?
I don't know offhand, sorry for that.
Yeah, you're in South Africa. It's America all the same.
Yeah, a lot of states and a lot of cities, so yeah,
Yeah,
it's a big place, America.
No difference one state or the other. Yeah.
So they specialize in mission critical battery energy storage solutions, which is your UPS data center applications, telecoms towers, 5G networks, LTE networks, your cable TV wire lines, also nuclear and utility scale projects specifically. So they are more focused on battery solutions for mission critical applications. They also have a solar range as well, which is a front terminal battery range, and then a large scale battery solution, which is a 48 volt up to 2000 amp hour battery system.
Wow. Okay. 48 volt, 2000 amp hour system, not a single battery.
That's 24 2-volt cells packed into a solution.
Yeah. And maybe we could mention that too. When you're working with lead acid batteries, you try to do series rather than parallel connections, because with parallel connections, if one string of batteries is working, has a little bit less resistance than the other, then that string of batteries will wear out sooner. And it's really important to pay attention to parallel connections to make sure that you don't have more resistance on one string than another. And also, like I mentioned too, it's just good to focus on series connections. And so people with larger lead acid battery banks will go for bigger 2-volt batteries. And oftentimes that might mean a 48 volt system would be 24 single batteries that are each a single cell. And then also, if a cell goes bad, you could just replace that cell, which is a battery, rather than replacing 6 cells, for instance, that makes a 12 volt battery, because all lead acid battery cells are 2 volts. And then you'd be like replacing 5 good cells. So that's another thing about that. So C&D Technologies is more than just manufacturing batteries, I guess, or are you manufacturing batteries?
Yes, they're also manufacturing batteries. So they have a plant in Attica. We've got our lab in Horsham, and then a plant in Reynosa, Mexico, and then also 2 manufacturing facilities in China, one in Shanghai and one in Jiangsu.
Okay. So when you said Attica, that's in New York, is it?
Yes, it's the flooded lead acid market where they still produce the old tried and trusted flooded lead acid unit.
Okay, so yeah, Attica, that's where I've done most of my time in prison. Attica is famous for that prison there. You go to, Attica and Alcatraz, those are my places where I write books and things like that. But I think that they do have like a famous prison there. I don't know too much about that. Read about it in the news. Okay. And so they also make like a lot of utility scale stuff. And so that's also a thing that sometimes people are studying when they're taking my classes. There's different articles in the National Electrical Code. That's the NEC, what we use for designing, all kinds of electrical systems, mostly in the Americas, especially United States. And so there's a couple of different articles, and one of them is Article 706, Energy Storage Systems, and that's what we're mostly using lately. But that's a rather new article over the last couple of code cycles. But then there's Article 480 that's been around since maybe Thomas Edison times, And it was always called storage batteries. And then they just changed it in the 2023 NEC to stationary standby batteries to differentiate it a little bit from 706 energy storage systems. And so they say that the people that are using 480 are more likely going to be people using the applications that you were saying C&D Technologies is using, maybe some kind of, backup system where you just float charge the batteries. So you just kind of keep them topped off, and in an emergency you'll use it. So maybe like you were saying, everything from like cell phone towers to communications, power plants, and you even said nuclear power plants. So yeah, it's probably not a good idea to like have a power outage at a nuclear power plant, and so it's good to have some backup batteries that are very reliable.
There's also different applications on power plants. So there's switch gear and control. So there's batteries for that, for backup. So there's different applications. It's not necessarily just renewable energy solutions, as an example. The big thing is that if you look at the Trojan and C&D portfolio, you can basically start from a 1 kilowatt-hour product battery, and you can go up to a megawatt-hour in battery size. It all depends on what your load requirement is, what your demand profile is, and how long you want to use this power system for.
Great.
Yes, it's a one-stop shop.
So a megawatt hour, and are you talking a megawatt hour of lead acid batteries?
Yes, in the old days, they used to do large-scale megawatt solutions, especially with the large 2-volt cells. If you look at some of the 3,000 amp hour 2-volt cells, Trojan produced a solar industrial battery back in the day, which was a 2,450 amp hour cell. And I've been on sites where they use 192 of them.
Wow. So how big is that? Is it like the biggest lead acid battery cell in the world, probably? How big is something like that?
Quite big. It weighs, I think, about 144 kilograms per battery. It's quite heavy, so it's not that easy to transport.
So if we multiply that by 2.2, we're talking over 300 pounds probably. So, yeah.
Yes, yes. And it's a big battery room with some air cons in. They used SMA, Sunny Island inverter charge controllers with the system as well. And it's basically to power a big lodge in Zimbabwe.
A big lodge in Zimbabwe. Everybody, let's go check it out. And so that's like we could go on safari?
Yes, it's called Boomy Hills is the lodge's name. And you can go on there and go for a safari. It's 4 or 5-star treatment, I think.
Uh-huh. Awesome. And then we could go do a battery class there. And then it's like a tax deductible vacation. We should organize something like that. So let me know, listeners, you're going to want to go to Zimbabwe, and we can, do some work. And just like in our spare time, we could check out the lions and giraffes and hippopotamuses and things like that. Yeah. Do you ever ride a hippopotamus?
No, I wouldn't do that. I think that would be a little bit crazy. But we've ridden different things in Africa. So yeah.
Yeah, I think hippopotamus is supposed to be like the most dangerous animal in the world. I heard they have some in Colombia, but anyway.
Far away from home.
Yeah, it was one of those crazy drug lords, had too much money, and then they went wild. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We interrupt you for a very important announcement. Sean White's Solar and Energy Storage Podcast has been brought to you by Sean White's Solar and Energy Storage Podcast. That's right, Sean White is sponsoring his own podcast, and he wants to remind you to go check out some of his classes. You can go to SolarSean, that's solar, SEAN.com, and then click on the links to check out his classes. You can check out his heat spring classes, and you can also hire him to teach classes for you, like at your company, something like that. Now back to the show. So maybe can you kind of just tell me what it looks like to see a megawatt hour lead acid battery system? Like you see this over in like a power plant or something?
Well, you don't see them that often anymore. Obviously, technology has moved on, and some technology is made with a bigger punch, if I can say it like that. So people have moved on, but some of these systems are still operating in Africa. I mean, this specific one that we're talking about it's basically a full-length hall that's full of batteries and packed full of air cons. There's distilled water inside this facility specifically to do watering on the batteries. There's electrical equipment to do measurements. And then all the inverters is obviously inside as well, where the panels connect into. So it's basically a complete power room on this lodge where they host all the batteries. And then if you look at upper parts in Africa as an example, we've done a lot of ATMs. So your normal cash ATM where you go to and put your card in to draw some cash, that system has a backup battery solution inside. So to also help you to draw cash when there's no power available.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, good.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that's a smaller scale system that uses 4 batteries or maybe 8 batteries, maximum up to 12. So that's normal 12-volt batteries that can be stacked in a rack, as an example.
Yeah, and another thing that we did in South Africa is me and my brother, Joe White, and then also the wife of the Magapes that I was telling you about, her name is Gwen. We started a company called Wela Solar, and we were trying to start a solar business there, but it was difficult at the time. I'm not too sure about what's going on. What's the name of the utility there? I can't remember. It's
ESCOM.
Escom, yeah, we're
ESCOM.
Escom.
Yeah.
And so I'm not sure if it's changed, but at the time, you're not allowed to export. And so that would be a reason for batteries. But at the time, too, batteries were just too expensive to, make your own electricity if you couldn't export and all that kind of stuff. And so maybe now you can export. I'm not sure. I haven't looked at it lately. And so it was a little bit difficult. And most of the solar was in these large, they call it a tender, where it's sort of like an auction where people bid on doing large scale solar projects and things like that. And so it was just like a little difficult. I remember like trying to even figure out what to bid on, and you had to pay like a whole lot of money just to see what it was that you're bidding on. So it was pretty much only made for like corporations that are kind of big, that they could handle paying like many thousands of dollars just to see what you were bidding on to get into the auction process. But that was all kind of interesting. But then another thing you'll see in much of the world is there's a lot of places where they do what we might call here load shedding or rolling blackouts. And so when there's only so much power on the grid, then you have to turn something off. And so people would get some batteries or generators and things like that and do backup. And so I'm sure you're probably heavily involved in that kind of stuff.
Yes, we are. I mean, load shedding, I think, is also a thing across the whole of Africa. It's not just in the US, if you can say it like that. So people want to become more energy independent. And if you have a household, and for example, there's load shedding from 6 to 8 at night, I mean, that's your prime family time when you normally want to watch a small story or maybe make some food. Now the lights is out. So we get involved in a lot of these systems, specifically with our 12-volt battery solutions for residential applications, where someone would have a battery, a 4-pack solution, or maybe an 8-pack solution, depending on how much energy they need. And this was catered for these load shedding periods. So when there's no electricity available from the grid, you can use your batteries to carry on with your day and don't worry about the lights going.
Maybe you could describe what one of these systems looks like. Like it's got an automatic transfer and all that kind of stuff, I guess.
Yes, so for example, most of the inverters you get these days are hybrid inverters. So it's an inverter that you can connect panels to. So you would put your panels on your roof, you would connect it to maybe a combiner box. Combiner box go into the inverter. The inverter has the power source from. You would obviously connect your batteries to the inverter as well, so it can charge from the panels, or the inverter can charge from the grid. So it depends on which one is available. Normally, you would set your inverter to solar panels. So the energy from the solar panels that you don't use during the day, that would be used to charge your batteries so that you can use them at night. And that's basically how the system works. So during at night, if there's a grid failure, the inverter will take over and simulate its own grid by using the batteries. And that will start supplying your energy. If it's during the daytime, it will do exactly the same, but the solar energy will start supplying your load first and complement it with the battery. It all depends on how the system is set up as well.
Yep. And I guess you probably have a way to program it to be non-export or export, things like that.
Yes, you can. And the inverters must also be grid compliant. So there's a grid compliance in most countries across the world, and most of the larger scale inverter manufacturers already comply to that, which means that if there's a failure on the grid or something like that, that these inverters also don't feed back into the grid and could hurt someone that's maybe working on the grid down the line. So there is rules and guidelines to be followed, and obviously quality
Yep.
products to use that complies to that.
Yeah, and we don't want to feed the grid when the grid is down and kill power linemen that are trying to fix things. And they call that anti-islanding. And so that's universal throughout the universe. There's no utility that will let you have anything that'll have any kind of electricity on the grid when the grid is down. And so are you using inverters to, like the C&D make inverters, or do you use other inverters?
So no, we don't make inverters, but our batteries works with all the mainstream inverters, most of the charge controllers in the world as well. I mean, we've been along for so many years that charge controllers basically grew with us, if I can say it like that. So we have algorithms available or charging parameters in our user manual, which is available on our website for each of the batteries. And you just program that into your inverter and it will charge according to the parameters that we set up.
Okay. So when people are buying a battery now that C&D and Trojan are the same company, does it say both on the battery, or do you still have like separate batteries that have different names on them?
Yes, so the C&D line has it's labeled C&D Technologies because they've been known for the brand in their specific industry for many years. And then the Trojan range is still labeled Trojan. We also have a range from Trojan which is labeled Solar specifically because of the nanocarbon additive for the negative plate. So yeah, and that battery would deliver 2,600 cycles at the 60% depth of discharge.
Yeah, I know people up in Alaska that take really good care of their Trojan L16 batteries, and they've had them working over 20 years, and they seem to be working just fine. And they typically only cycle them from like 90 to 100%, and then they'll turn on their generator, or if the sun's not shining bright because they are in a rainforest and the world's most northern temperate rainforest. And so not a ton of sun there. A lot of people also have some wind turbines and things like that. And they almost, I think, have a personal relationship with every cell in the battery. And they'll go like, I know this one needs a little bit more water than the other ones. And, you give it distilled water. I got a question for you. It's like, you're always supposed to do distilled water. What if you gave it the wrong kind of water, or they had some mineral in it, or just like you had some bottled water? Like, I'm sure people do that in an emergency. I think we did that in our boat. We were just like, oh, this battery's trash, let's just see what well, here's a bottle of water. We're not going to go to the store and get some distilled water for a battery that's trashed. So what's with the distilled water, pure H2O?
It's just clean water. And I mean, if you look at a battery, it's a living thing. So, I mean, as a human, we wouldn't drink from a dam. We would first boil the water and make it clean before we drink it. So, I think because a battery is a living specimen, we want to make sure that we feed it clean water when we do feed it. I think there's a lot of places in the world where they can't necessarily get distilled water, but they try and use the cleanest possible water that they can find in some cases. We say distilled water because it's the best for the battery. That's basically the reason why. But yeah, if you don't have distilled water available and your water is clean enough, the impurities obviously cause problems in the batteries, which is not great. But yeah, make sure your
Yeah.
water is clean if you use it.
Yeah, they even say that some people say that we're not even supposed to drink out of those plastic water bottles because there's microplastics that are getting past the blood-brain barrier. So
There's a lot of stories, yes.
just messing up. So it's not like the end of the world if you used a bottled water that was relatively clean and good, but you want distilled water.
Don't do it every day. Yes. Yeah, distilled water is best preference, and always make sure that you get the longest life out of it.
That's always good to know because too, like I have an electric vehicle and it still has a lead acid battery in it. It's like the auxiliary battery. It's a deep cycle battery. So the big battery, that's the lithium-ion battery, it's not on all the time. So the other battery like is sitting there waiting for me to turn on the heater with my phone, or see how the battery charging is going, reprogram something, alarm system. Some people have like cameras that tell if somebody's breaking into your car and all that kind of stuff. So lead acid is probably going to be around for a while, it seems. Yeah.
Yeah, I would believe so, yes. There will be other technologies that come one day and more technologies that companies will play with. So it's exciting future for energy storage solutions. But yeah, the lead acid technology will always be there. They'll try it and test it.
Okay, and so maybe a little bit more about your region. So Europe, Middle East, and Africa. So what happens if somebody here that's like in the United States wants to go on an adventure and look for some work so it could maybe pay for their travel over in the EMEA region? Do you have any tips for them, or like how somebody could just kind of go and help you out, or maybe somebody with some experience that could set up battery systems in Africa, or like, do nonprofit type of work, or, just to kind of go on an adventure. Do you have any pointers?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of adventure all over Africa. I can definitely say West Africa has got its different parts of adventure. If you're a surfer, please visit West Africa as well. If you like the heat and the high humidity, it's a great place. I would get involved with the UN and the US aid as an example if you want to help and support projects in Africa. There's also a lot of big companies already funded from the US, like a company called Power Hive, as an example, in Africa. They do a lot of peace projects. They build mini grids in a lot of markets to make sure that villages has power solutions available and that they can grow so that everybody doesn't move to the cities at the end of the day. So yeah, that's a way that you can get involved. Look at some of these US aid companies, Power Hive is an example. And then obviously in the Middle East, there's storage is not the biggest thing, but solar systems is definitely growing there, more your large scale grid scale storage solutions. And then in Europe, I mean, solar has been part of the European household for a long, long time. If you look at countries like Germany, it's more than 23 gigawatts of installed capacity. Yeah, storage is becoming part of their life now as well. People want to be more independent at the end of the day. They want to store their own energy and use it when they need it at most. So get involved in it. I think across the world we can do more with solar energy than we think we can. So I think everybody should get involved and try and produce for themselves, if I could say it like that.
Yeah, and I wonder like how difficult it is to do work in Europe, because one thing that I've noticed is like I've taught classes just about everywhere, but Europe seems to be the toughest place, in Antarctica, because they're just like, oh, we already know everything. We don't need some American or, somebody coming telling us how to do our solar systems. And so it would be kind of neat though for people that are like, say, like just a rooftop installer in the US and one in Germany, just go like, hey, let's trade places for a year. There should be some kind of
Yeah,
exchange program like that. Come on, people
that's
listening, make that
a great
happen.
idea.
Yeah, because it would just be like, it'd be like, that would be just like a super great adventure for somebody that's just like, in their 20s and they're climbing on roofs, installing solar, and they're just be like, hey, let's trade places. And I could do the America experience, you could do the Europe experience. In fact, the employers could probably, pay them less because there'd be like part of their pay would just be adventure.
Imagine that. That sounds good.
That would be kind of fun. And then, so you have a pretty huge region. So do you go to Intersolar in Munich all the time?
Yes, we do. We do a 10-day event. We used to exhibit there in the past as well before COVID and these type of things happened. So, but yes, we go there. And we've got a team that's based in some parts of Europe, some in the UK. Got someone in the Middle East. So we do have the area covered. But yeah, it's quite a big area.
Yeah, and as far as calling it Intersolar, they've also kind of rebranded to include more than solar, like your batteries. So they call it the Smarter E, with like EVs and all kinds of stuff and electric things. And I'm actually I'm on the award jury for outstanding projects. And then I also try to go whenever I can. And it's just a lot of fun. And you get to go over there to
Yeah.
Munich. And one thing I've wanted to see in Munich, though, is they're supposed to have a river that goes right through town, and it has a standing wave that people surf on. Have you ever heard of that?
Yes, I've actually seen it
Oh,
walked next to it and had a look at the surface. It looks like a lot of fun.
yeah, and I think like they're just lined up even like in the winter at midnight just because it's such a popular thing. And I have a friend that like loves the cold and stuff like that. And so he keeps telling me about it, and we haven't made it there yet. So maybe we'll make it out there this year and check it out. And Intersolar in Munich, I think it is, let's see, I have it on my calendar somewhere. It is May. Looks like it's the 6th to the 9th, I believe, in Munich.
Mhm.
So I always call it Intersolar Munich. If you search it, you'll find it there, or you could be more correct and call it the Smarter E. And it's, just another excuse to go check out Munich. A lot of fun. So you do have quite a big range, but there's still, the world is bigger than the places where you're working. So what should people do too if they want to buy some of your batteries in other countries, like in other continents and things like that, which you do seem to have like a good part of the world. I guess you don't have Asia, the Americas, Australia, things like that. So you have some colleagues in these places, I guess, and you could probably introduce people to them.
Yes, we do. We've got a colleague based in Australia as well. We've got some in the Asia market. We've got a full team in APAC as well. We've got a full team in Latin America. We've got distributors in more than 121 countries across the world. So if you need a Trojan battery, you can go onto our website and say, find a battery. And then you can easily see one of our distributors closest to you in country, and they will have stock of the range, or they will easily get it for you.
Great, great. And then for people that are in your regions, how will they get a hold of you? And we'll put this in the show notes and things too. But yep.
Well, they can always contact me on email, gbarnard@cdtrojan.com. If they need any support, as I said, we have colleagues in various regions, so we can interact with them and introduce them to the colleagues in their region. They can also go check out my LinkedIn page, or they can follow the company's LinkedIn page and put a request forward there, or just go to our website and put a request on the website, and one of our team members will follow up with you.
Great, great. And so let's see, I think you said you worked at SMA too. So I'm just kind of looking at your LinkedIn page right now. And so for a few years in 2014 to 2016, you were the SMA guy. That's funny. I might have ran into you almost when I was over there. I can't remember exactly what year. It was probably before that though. And so I've done a little bit of work for SMA. It seems like, like a great company. They were the number one inverter company in the world for quite a while when the solar industry was so big in Germany and things like that. So that was kind of neat. And are you still working with them? Because you mentioned Sunny Island and things like that. Like with the batteries, do you guys kind of coordinate, I guess, probably?
Not necessarily directly coordinate with them. I do know some of their partners in Africa. Obviously, they have a big brand name and it's an exceptional product. So we try and marry our batteries with their inverters in the market where we can. We have done a lot of projects together in the past where, for example, their importer would import a SMA inverter and some of our batteries and put them together as a solution. So yes, we do see each other still in the market, and yeah, it's a great support team as well from SMA.
But you're, like you said before too, your batteries work with any inverters or like any kind of inverters that work with batteries that are, lead acid batteries and things like that. So pretty cool. Other things too that I know that when we're talking about lithium ion batteries, there's a lot more concentrated energy and everybody's worried about, thermal runaway and all that kind of stuff. And there's lots of monitoring and battery management systems. And with lead acid batteries, typically you're not as concerned about that kind of stuff. But another thing that I've noticed too is so far in the US, we have all these different listings. And so UL 9540 is for energy storage systems, which is usually a battery and an inverter. And so far, nobody has come up with a UL 9540 listed. Nobody's just gone through the listing process with a lead acid battery. I guess it's different because you're in a different region, but I just thought maybe that was kind of interesting. But do you know anything about UL 9540, or you're just in a different place? You probably don't have to deal with that.
Yeah, I mean, we do deal with it across the world, the UL specifications, and most of our products do comply to that as well, even the UN specifications for lithium ion as an example. And then also in our region, IEC is some of the specifications that they expect us to comply to. I remember one of the old IEC specifications was IEC 61427, which was specifically related to renewable energy battery solutions. I'm not sure if they implement that across the region anymore, but yeah, there's a lot of specifications and we do comply to them. Otherwise, we put it forward to our lab or to a third-party lab for testing so that we make sure we do comply.
Yeah, and somebody using lead acid batteries in the US is probably not using Article 706. They're probably using Article 480, stationary standby batteries or storage batteries. It was what it was called before. And so they wouldn't be using the same kinds of design codes for lead acid batteries. And plus, you're typically going to be like a lower voltage than a lot of these lithium ion batteries, things like that too. And plus, like you said, you are making some lithium ion batteries that are going into golf carts and things like that. So those golfers, they could get a lot more holes in on a charge, so.
Definitely, and yeah, the cart is obviously a lot lighter than it used to be with all the lead acid batteries. So yeah, it's a great add-on to the game of golf.
Yeah, and I know that a lot of times the old timers, 20, 30 years ago, when they were building a system, a lot of times they were buying golf cart batteries. And so the traditional golf cart battery was a 6-volt battery, So that would be 3 2-volt cells. And so instead of having, I guess, 8 6-volt batteries to get up to 48 volts or whatever volts your golf cart is working with, you would have to put less batteries in there. So the golf cart would be lighter. Do you see the golf carts? Are they new golf carts? Are they able to go with both types of technologies, or are they just making the golf carts for one technology or the other?
Well, you can definitely use both type of technologies in the golf cart. If it's an aftermarket golf cart, as an example, if it had lead acid batteries in, you can take the Trojan One Pack and just drop it into the golf cart. If you need a specific bracket, we also manufacture it just to make sure that it sits nice and tight in the golf cart itself. You just need to change your charger or change your charger's algorithm. At the end of the day, lithium-ion charges different to flooded lead acid, and it charges different to AGM. So that's the only upgrade that you would need to do by yourself, a new charger that's specifically for lithium-ion technology. But yes, it's interchangeable. You can decide if you want to use lithium or lead acid in your cart.
Great, great. Well, let me see, Gerrit, is there anything else that you want to talk about or cover?
Oh, not from my end. I mean, in the Americas, I know you guys have got a lot of sunshine available when the sun does shine. And I would encourage everybody to look at solar solutions.
Uh-huh.
Get your own batteries. We've got Trojan Battery sales across the Americas, and we've also got a couple of partners that can support you. So yes,
Great.
help yourselves.
Thank you so much. How's the day there? How's your summer? Is it a sunny day?
Yes, it's been really good. We probably close to 30 degrees Celsius today. The sun is still shining. It's 6 p.m. here by me, so the sun will only set around 8 o'clock. So it's a good day.
Awesome. Yeah. So 30 Celsius, 68 Fahrenheit. You know, Cape Town is by the ocean, sort of like where I am, and San Francisco Bay Area is by the ocean, but here it's a rainy day. So if time does not exist, then you live in a sunny place and I live in a rainy place. You know, I was just listening to different philosophies, and some people say time doesn't exist. So you got to make the most of the way you feel right now. So, and I feel good. So
that's great. Me too.
All right, Gerrit. Well, thanks for being on the podcast, Gerrit. And we'll include things in the show notes, how people can get a hold of you, and different links to C&D Technologies, Trojan Battery Company. And thanks for listening to Sean White's Solar and Energy Storage Podcast. And if you want to learn about batteries and things like that and get yourself NABCEP ESIP certified, and they're calling it ESIP, which is an acronym. If I said ESIP, that would be an abbreviation. And get yourself NABCEP ESIP certified, which stands for Energy Storage Installation Professional. So I have a class at HeatSpring, and you could just go to solarsean.com and click on the links there, find my class, and you too will be one of the first that are ESIP certified. And I just was looking at that website yesterday, and so far, besides me, there's 12 others in the whole universe, including South Africa, Europe, Middle East, all these different places that have the ESIP certification. And if you wanted to get that too, NABCEP got a grant, and the first 200 people are getting the $375 exam fee taken care of. And I think most of the people, maybe even all of them, were in my class. So make sure to get yourself ESIP certified and to go to solarsean.com. All right. Thanks so much, Gerrit.
Thanks a lot, Sean.
Woo.